V with 85th and Wade. Thanks for joining me. Now, in today's episode, it is all about hashtag Project Dress a Girl 2023. Now, this effort was started by Mari of Mari Sews Her Curves, both here on YouTube as well as Instagram. I will link her channel below as well as her handle for Instagram and a video that talks all about Project Dress a Girl, what type of dresses to make up, where to send them, and all that jazz. Okay, so this effort goes from September 1st through September 30th. This is actually the third year that Mari has spearheaded this effort. 2021, I wasn't able to participate. I had just gotten into sewing, so I wasn't very confident of my skills. However, last year, 2022, I was able to participate with 3 dresses, 2 different patterns, and I'll post some pictures here, but it was the Allison Tent dress for girls, and then it was the Oliver and S popover dress. So I made one of them reversible, and then for the popover dress, I made 2 of those. So very excited to participate last year. And so this year, I've actually participated again and increased the number of dresses that I was able to make to a total of 6. So this year, I actually used 3 different patterns. And for each pattern, I made 2 dresses. So I'll start with the first one, and that is Butterick 3860. Now this is a pattern for older girls, and so your 10 to your 16 size. The thing I like about this pattern is actually that it is for girls plus. So you have 10 and a half, 12 and a half, 14 and a half, and 16 and a half. So I thought that was really cool that I had the opportunity to make some dresses for girls who needed that ½ inch more in the width as opposed to the length. Now I believe Project Dress a Girl dresses normally go up to a size 12. So I made a 12 and a half to start. But you know, if I had a tall girl, maybe I wanted to do a 14 or make the 12 just a little bit longer. So there's some options there. With this pattern, it has 2 dresses or 2 variations of dresses, a top, shorts, and pants. And so obviously I made the dresses. And for the dresses, they're basically the same. It's just one has trim around the arm side and the bottom hem. I decided not to do that and to go with the basic straight dress. Now this pattern has 4 pattern pieces. I elected not to do the facings and instead use bias binding around the arm side and the neckband. I'll pop some footage in here that talks about my modification because I actually added a pocket to this dress. Okay, so this is Butterick 3860. This is a pattern for older girls. So it's like, I think 8.5 or 10.5 up to 14.5. I believe Project Dress a Girl wants you go up to a size 12. So I figured I'd start with the 12.5. Again, if there are girls with larger widths, then I want to make sure that they have, room in their dresses. But for the most part, I wanted to stick with the 12. Now, the only thing that I did different for this dress was to add side seam pockets. So this is the easier of them all. Again, this is just a 2 pattern piece dress. You cut the front on the fold, the back you cut in 2. I kept the original markings in terms of where to actually stop sewing up the center back, where you put the actual button. Again, we're not using buttons, but I wanted to have it there as well as all of the original markings just in case. I wanted to make this up in its original state, but I did keep all of the markings. So instead of the button, it'll just be, fold over with bias tape. So in terms of the actual hack I did for this one was I just went and I measured down 3 inches. Sorry about that. Let's get that to adjust. I marked down from the waistline 3 inches on the front. I looked it up in a couple of different places to see, okay, where under, below the waistline should the pocket start. And it said anywhere from 2 to 3 inches. And so I figured, okay, I'll just do originally 3 inches, but I made all the markings. So in case I wanted to go back and make that closer to the waistline, I could do that. The 3 inches was based, I think, more so on adult patterns. And I figured girls' torsos would be a little bit shorter. So that's why I put all of these markings here. However, I did just go ahead and use the 3 inches, I believe, for this first attempt. So I did that marking, marked the waistline, went down 3 inches, and this is where the pattern, or where the pocket started. And then I did the same thing here on the back. However, when I went to line them up, it wasn't necessarily aligning. And so what I did was I just went ahead, put the pocket into the front, and then when it got time to go to the back, I actually laid the pattern piece, or I pinned the front and the back together, put the pattern pieces on top of the fabric, so then I could mark from there where the 1, 2, and 3 inches were based on the front, so that they would come together appropriately. And then I just went ahead and sewed that in. So again, the only changes that I made to this one, again, sorry for that blur, is that for this pattern, it went into, I added the side seam pockets. I wanted to also show you the actual pattern pocket or pocket pattern that I use. It's from Treasury. I'll link it down below as well. It is a free pattern, and so, you know, just one sheet of paper is what you're printing off. You can test it to make sure the size comes out correctly. But this is the pattern piece, and you can just go ahead and insert that into the side seam. Again, I started 3 inches below the waistband, but or the waistline, but you can, you know, decrease that as you think you need to. So that's what I did to hack dress number 1. I added pockets. I took away the facings and I added pockets. Streamline the process as much as possible. Now, for all 6 of the dresses, I used the same 2 fabrics. I found 2 Ankara fabrics at my local African-owned store, and they have the exact same colorways. So while the print of them are different, both of them have a dark blue, a white, and like a fuchsia or pink color. And so I thought that they would work well together. So for the first dress for Butterick 3860, it's just a standard dress, so it's all one color. Even the tie is the same color. And I did this just because sometimes girls don't like contrasting colors. So I wanted to make something that was simple yet really fun for the girl to wear in terms of the print of the fabric. Now, in order to add a pop of color, I did go ahead and add the contrasting fabric inside the pocket. So you do have a pop of color there, but for the most part, it is just a straight dress. Now, the second dress is exactly the same. All I did was continue with the second fabric pattern, again, adding that pop of color for the pocket in there. And then this dress was complete. So instead of buttons, obviously, I use ties instead, but for the most part, take out the facing, add pockets, and we're good. So for pattern number 2 is Butterick 6937. Now this pattern goes from sizes 7 to 14, and so I made a size 8. Now with this pattern, you can have big fun. I think I counted a total of 16 different patterns or fabrics that you could use to put this dress together if you like. Hey, this is a judgment-free zone, so if that's what you want to do, go for it. I, again, only used 2. The envelope actually has 3, so there's a dark, there's a light, and then on the sleeve is a medium. So again, you can do as much or as little contrasting as you like. For this one, though, you have your front that's cut twice. I made that on the fold, but then in the back there's this cutout. And so here's some footage of me explaining what I did to modify it. Okay, so for Butterick 6937, a couple of modifications I made for this dress for efficiency's sake. I'll start with pattern piece 1, which is the front. What I did here was, because this was cut in 2 and I wanted to make this cut on the fold, not to have that seam in the center front, what I did was trace the original pattern as it is intended to be sewn. I then went in 5/8 of an inch, which is the actual seam allowance, and created a second center seam. With this, I was able to then place this second line here on the fold and just cut it out as I normally would. So anytime you have something that you're cutting twice, but you want to cut it on the fold, just make sure you're taking out that seam allowance. And that was the modification I did for the bodice front. Now for the bodice back, I had to get a little bit more creative here. So this is the modified version. This is the end result. Remember, For the back, it had an opening here as well as a flap in which to fold. So let me grab the original pattern piece so you can see the modifications that I made. So here is the original pattern piece for the back of Butterick 6937. As you can see, it has this opening here in the back along with a flap and a buttonhole. For Project Dress a Girl, we want to eliminate all of this and just have it more streamlined and more appropriate. So basically what I need to do is take this center back seam or center back cutting line and extend it all the way to the top of the neckline. So I just took a ruler, make sure the angle was aligned appropriate, which in this case is just a straight line. So take a ruler and just extend it all the way up to the neckline. And I'll show you the pattern piece now. So here's the pattern piece. Again, the arm side is exactly the same. The shoulder is exactly the same. But what we did here was take the piece, and if I line up my notches there, you can see that it extends all the way up to the original neckline. Now, that eliminates this opening here in the back. However, we still need to figure out where to stop this the stitching so that we can have it open and add the ties. And it seemed like just a natural stop point as to the bottom of the flap. So this is where we stop. Now you could go up a little bit more or down a little bit if you wanted to, but that was just the easiest stopping point in terms of where to actually stop stitching the back together. This part here will be open so the girl can get her head in, and then we'll have enough to fold over for the bias tape. So pretty simple in terms of closing up openings that you don't want on dresses. And you can do this for the front as well as the back. So that's the modification I made for Butterick 6937. This one actually called for lining the front bodice front and back. I elected not to do any linings, and again, just use bias binding on the arm side and the neckband, taking away the button, adding ties. So for this dress, what I did was, again, using the two fabrics, was to do the contrast of the bodice top and the pockets to match, and then having the sleeves match the skirt. So really simple there. And then, on the back, added just a little bit more contrast to the top and had it a contrast for the actual ties. But again, utilizing bias binding for the neck seam here. Obviously, this has sleeves, so I don't need to do it for the arm side. But this is dress number 1. And then this is dress number 2. So I alternated top and bottom on dress number 2, but again, all of the same attributes as the first one. So again, simplifying it as much as possible. Now, dress number 3. So for dress number 3, which is Butterick 5876, I made a 12.5, I made an 8. So yep, I made a size 4. This pattern comes in sizes 1 through 4. So 4 being the largest. And I just thought it was so adorable. So I really like the style of this. It comes in a number of different variations. What caught my eye was actually the scallop hem. So I knew I wanted to do that. However, I tried to keep it all one piece, but also keep the scallop. So not have that contrasting hem. And I talk about the modifications that I made for this dress here. For Butterick 5876, did a couple different things here to make this hackable. I probably did it the long and even perhaps the wrong way, but in the end, it worked out. There are some things that I would do differently when I make this again. But for this pattern, it had four pieces. So you had the front that you cut on the fold, the back that you cut twice. It had the bottom hem, so it could be contrasting or the same, and then it had pockets. So instead of having all of those pieces, what I decided to do was to actually combine the hem and the original pattern piece. However, after reading some reviews of it, everyone said it came up short. So I also added about, I think this was 2 inches or 1 inch, something like that, in length to the dress. So this is a size 4, you know, it didn't necessarily need to be too long. If you get a girl that's, you know, really in a size 3, this would be perfect for her in terms of length, and maybe grow with her a little bit, but I wanted to definitely add some length there. And because of that, because of adding length to it, when I put the two pieces together, they were no longer in line, meaning that when you add this inch, you're actually adding width to this pattern piece. Sorry guys that this keeps going out of focus. You're adding length to the pattern piece. So this hem piece was too short or too narrow to fit any longer with the additional 1 or 2 inches that I added here. I think this is like 1 inch. Anyway, so we actually had to make sure that we used a ruler and kept the angle correct. Now, the beauty of it is this front piece is a straight line. So, you know, if you connect the hem to the dress itself, it'll be fine. It'll just be one straight line and you're safe there. However, if you were just to, you know, scoot it up to match, you'd be fine. On the inside, because this is an angle, it's like an A-line dress, this is where you run into it being too narrow or not working with the seam. So a couple of things you can do there. You can just keep going and extend this scallop here. If you have like a curved ruler, you can just extend that out, making sure that it stays the same length here, or it ends at the same point, but just kind of extend the curve out. You can do that. You can also center this piece itself in between the two. So, you know, maybe if it was like a 2/8 inch on this side short and 2/8 inch on this side short, you just balanced it, which meant that you would need to then extend both this scallop as well as this middle scallop in order to do that. So that again, the curve goes down and it'll meet in the middle, because you need to do the same thing on the back. So you have a couple different options there. What I did was the centering piece, because I wanted to make sure they, you know, at least they kind of stayed in balance, or that one wasn't as big or, you know, too much bigger than the other two. Plus this was going to be in the center of the dress. So it would actually look cuter if this was, you know, kind of big in the front center and this one was big in the front, in the back center, because this would be on the sides of the dress. So it worked out in that regard. I kept my same stitch lines there as far as the depth. The depth of the scallop didn't change. It was just making sure that when you align it, this line here in the center is a straight line, and that angle is still in the same degree. So that's for the scallop when you increase the width or the length of the dress. Now, had I not increased the length of the dress and just put those two pieces would have just come together easily, and we'd have been one and done. A third option that I thought about afterwards was to go ahead and put these together, and then somewhere up in here is actually lengthen and shorten. Would have been much simpler, wouldn't have to do new math or anything like that. You would have just scaled, you know, just completed the degree of the angle and kept it moving. Either way, you know, there's options there for you to put those two pieces together. So in doing that, you also have to consider how you're going to finish this. So if you want to finish this with bias tape, you certainly can. You just have some curves there and be careful with that. I think optimally is to make this a reversible dress so that you don't have to do all of that. You can just, you know, sew these together from the inside. The scallops will be just fine, you know, making sure you're cutting into your curves or whatnot so that they lay flat. You can do that because it's only two pieces now. It's so much easier to do. I did do, of course, you'll see bias binding to finish off the arm and the neck's bands, or the arm side and the neckline. So, you know, that was pretty much easy peasy there as well. However, it's a size 4. So you can imagine this little circle gets really small. So take your time when you're doing the arm side. The neck isn't so bad because you start at one end because this is not a full circle or enclosed circle. So that worked out. But just a couple of things you can do. This would be a very friendly assembly line type of dress if you do it reversible. Even or if you just take off the scallops, which I think makes the dress, right? So but if you take off the scallops, you can do this assembly line, pretty fairly easy. If you do this reversible, then you would, have no issues because everything would be pretty much enclosed there. So that's what I did for this Butterick 5876. So again, streamlining this process as much as possible. I put those pattern pieces together, extended it a bit, just so the dress could have somewhat of a similar look to what it has on the pattern envelope, but making it as efficient as possible. So for my first dress for this one, again, in line with the size 12.5, the entire dress itself is the same. I contrasted the pockets. And then with the scallops, while I thought I was being a genius with it, it really didn't work out, or else I really didn't want to put all of this together only to just totally destroy the scallop hem. So what I did was go ahead and cut out an individual piece for the hem and then sewed those together at the bottom, flipped it in, and then just sewed it across. Now, because this pattern print is very busy, you really can't see that seam line, so that's a plus. But then also because of the length of the pattern piece, I actually had to reduce it so that it didn't interfere with the pocket. So just a couple of things there that I needed to tweak, but all in all, I think it came out great. And then for contrast in the back, the tie is a contrast to the actual dress itself with the bias binding again here on both. So this is dress number 1. Oh, look at that. That hem is adorable. And then, of course, the alternate fabric for dress number 2. And I think my scallop hems came out pretty good. So all in all, 6 different dresses, 3 different patterns, 2 dresses each pattern. When you're looking at patterns, just don't look at the envelope. Actually consider what you can do to either streamline the process if you want to do assembly line, or just to make it more time efficient for yourself. So as I go through these dresses again, I'm more than likely will utilize these same patterns next year. I actually traced out every single size of each of the patterns so that 1, it all stays intact in its original form, but then 2, I can just, throughout the year be able to say, oh, I have enough fabric for this dress. Let me go ahead and make this up in a variety of sizes. So my ultimate goal would have a 1 through 16 in every, a size for every dress. That would be phenomenal. We'll see if I can ever make that happen. But let me know, what do you do when you look at a pattern, or if you're doing something like this and you want to have some efficiencies there? Do you hack your patterns? Do you mash pieces together to make it all one to streamline that process? Are you participating in Dress a Girl Around the World or Project Dress a Girl 2023 this year? Have you made your dresses? Are you still making your dresses? Are you going to start on Friday to finish by Saturday? Let me know in the comments. Again, this has been such a pleasure for me to participate in again this year. Thank you so much, Mari, for putting this on again. It's been a real treat to see all of the dresses that have been submitted. We've already surpassed what we submitted last year, and so we're just waiting for that grand finale number on the 30th or sometime shortly thereafter when they tally all the dresses to see what the sewing community has come together to do. So links in the description box about Project Dress a Girl. It's not too late. It's never too late. You can always submit a dress any time of the year to any of the ambassadors. I'll also link the Project Dress a Girl or Dress a Girl Around the World website in the description box below. So maybe there's someone close to you that's accepting dresses. But again, such a worthy cause to be a part of. So glad, so honored, so blessed to be a part of it. Thank you so much for joining me on this sewing journey, and I'll see you next time. Bye.